Okay, good morning. So we're up to Siman Yud Aleph. Siman Kuf Nun Tes Sif Yud Aleph. Very interesting halachas. Okay, says the Mechaber, Hakol Kasherim Litin Mayim LeYadayim. Anyone is able to pour water over your hands. Afidu Cheresh Shoyta V'Katan. That's considered koyach gavra. Even a cheresh, a deaf mute, a shoyta, someone who's mentally deficient, v'katan and a child. Ovid gilulim v'nida. V'ikaman da'amad the katan pachas ben shisha dinik koif. He's got a din of a monkey. He's not a barda. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Samaches cheresh shoyta v'katan. De'ena b'nei das. Ovid gilulim v'nida. After b'nei Yadayim the truma osel alidehem. Even though to wash your hands for truma purposes, that's also through these people. To metamein hamein b'maso, because they are going to be metamed the water through carrying it. Nida deraisa ve'ida chachom gozru aleim tuma u'biyad drabonon. Benetila lechulin legozru, for them to pour water over your hands for chulin purposes, for your cheese sandwich, that's not a problem. V'yesh oimrim mishum debizmanenu tomid kol hamayim tmein. In any event, nowadays we're all Tomei Mesim, and anyone who's been to Levaya, everyone's been in a house where there's a mace, is Tomei Mace, and therefore there's no reason to be machmir. Lochein leichoshu lezeh Chazal were not cheshish because achrein lekol makom lechatchila tov lizoy shalitu yadayim mehem. However, lechatchila one should avoid it. However, in 69 he quotes the Chazan Ish, who says that it's shalimot sinu misha hichmir bezeh. We haven't found anyone who's machmir that let's say a nida or whoever it is can't pour water over your hands for Netilas Yadayim. Imkain af nida lo titel minida tachaverta, because otherwise, for example, a nida couldn't pour for her friend who's a nida. For af lo titel me'atzman, she can't even pour for herself. For tzrich levakesh Torah sheitin al yoda, you got to find a Torah person to pour her Netilas Yadayim on her hands. V'arishonim kozvush Netilas azvan and faket, the Rishonim write that she can pour for herself. V'oid shekivan. Shekayoyim shekulam Tomei Mesim. In any event, nowadays we're all Tomei Mesim. Imkain afim nakbit shlilatel minida atayin is Tomei Mesim manarviach. In any event, the person who's pouring water, so fine. So the person is not a nida, but the person may be a Tomei Mes. So and therefore we're makel. Good. Dinner kakoif. We said that a child under the age of 6. He's got a din of a kaif. That there are those who are puzzle with the kaif because it's not kaif gavra. This person has got no das whatsoever. The gun is mashma that you don't have to be worried about this. A cotton is not considered like a kaif. Because a kaif is a kaif, is not an adam. The less kan kaif gavra. Because this is a human being after all. After ein boidas legara mishaita is no different to a shaita. Good. Yud base. Im hakoif min chaya. Pirush min chaya. It's a type of animal. We know what it is. A monkey. Sima belaz. Noisin ma'im yadayim. Yesh poslim v'yesh machshirim. There are two opinions. V'nirim divreihem, and we can nirim divreihem. L'kol mokum yesh lahachmir. Okay, so there's different opinions whether a kaif can pour water over your hands for Netilas Yadayim. Says the Mishnah Berurah min chaya v'yesh bo ksas das l'tashmir. It's got some sort of knowledge. Yesh poslin. What's the reason to say that a kaif can't be good? The ein kan koyach gavra. It's not a gavra. V'yesh machshirin. We just need someone to pour it over you, and therefore this is someone, this is something, someone. Yesh lahachmir b'di'evet kasha b'eli rabba kosav degam b'di'evet yachsav v'yitel b'li bracha b'di'evet, if you can, to rewash without a bracha eladimein le'mayim yesh lismech on tizu. If you haven't got any other water, then you can be somech on that. Okay, Yud Gimel. So we're Kuf Nun Tes Sif Yud Gimel. Very interesting. Do you have to have kavana when you wash your hands for bread? So he said, says the Mechaber, you have in mind that this netila, this washing, is going to make it permitted for me to eat this bread. So the person who is noisin, who's pouring the water, if he has kavana, then that would suffice, even if the noitel hasn't got any kavana at all. Says the Mishnah Berurah, now the Magen Avraham is very strict, that if you have no kavana whatsoever, he says even b'di'evet is no good. Ein shom aval agra b'kuf nun ches sif zayin hiskim kasov b'lo kavana kosher. He says that a person doesn't have any kavana at all is actually kosher. V'cheinu das rov harishonim. B'di'evet b'vada yesh lahakel kashein l'mayim nitl shein is kadas ha'mechaber. That if you did it without kavana, that you don't have to wash again. Certainly, if you haven't got any water, it's okay. For kavonas hanoisin, now, there's a very interesting note 72. He says, which is Melamed's chus, because I don't know how many of us have proper kavana when we're washing in Netilas Yadayim. So this is a very useful note 72. First of all, when do you actually have kavana? So v'hazman shebo yesh lechaven l'shem netila machsheres lachila l'deazu kosav hachazan ish shel koidim sheyotzu hamayim me'akli. Before you actually pour it, you should have kavana kadesh nesinas hamayim me'akli shechelek me'anatila ta'aseh kvar l'shem tahor lachila. That I'm pouring this water in order to cleanse my hands to ready them to eat. Now, ochein. Adam sherog little yodov bekli rak l'tzerech suda. A person who only uses a kli not for after going to the bathroom, but just when he goes for a suda, for kol shan also notel beli kli, and all other times he washes without. Va'ata notel yodov bekli. When you wash for bread, you use a kli. Below lechav and l'shem netila. Das hagon Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Shlomo Zalman is of the opinion shenetilose bestomach chashuva netila im kavona. That if you're washing your hands with a kli, then that is assumed you're doing it in order to wash your hands for bread purposes. Why else are you using a kli? And therefore there is an implied kavana. For and he brings a very good susha from a Chayodam, which we mentioned many months ago. He didn't have kavana specifically to be yotze his mitzvah of Kriya Shema. Even according to Mandam, who says mitzvah shrichas kavana, even if the guy didn't have kavana, if you're doing it as part of tefillah, why else are you davening saying Krishna as part of Mariv? Isn't it, of course, to be yotze your mitzvah? And therefore, there is an implied kavana, which is a useful limud zchus from the Chai Adam. Of course, the one should have in mind and think it through, but these are useful limud zchusim. Okay, Yud Dalet says the Mechaber. Now that we spoke about this previously, we're now going to talk about Tfilas Yadayim. We'll come to Tfilas Yadayim in a sea, in a river, at the end of the sea, and we'll get there today, but at the end of the Simon, I mean. But let's go through Peseda. Yudalet. Hit bil yodav b'mei ma'ayon. If a person was tovel yadayim, he dipped his hands into some form of spring. Afilu ein bo aboim saw. Even if that spring does not have a 40 saw, also like tvila, that is considered a good tvila. Kol shemischasin yodav bohem b'basacha. So long as you can cover your hands in one dip. V'mit bilam b'mei mikveh. If you dip your hands into a mikveh, yesh omrim shedina k'ma'ayon, and therefore you don't need 40 saw. V'yesh omrim shetzorach aboim saw, and others say you do need 40 saw. V'naktinon kedivra mekel. With mekel, if you haven't got 40 saw, it's okay. V'yesh lahachmeh lechatchila, says the Rama. Ideally you should be machmeh. Says the Mishnah Berurah Tes and Ein Zayin. B'mei ma'ayan hainu b'chom meimos hanoivin. Any flowing natural water. Even if they flow quite far away. Because if you've got 40 saw in a spring, then for sure it works. Like with any water, even if they're not flowing. So long as it covers both hands, that a ma'ayan, a natural spring water, is going to be mataheh, even for a smaller amount. Kol shemischasin bo, as long as the item is going to be covered. For kol shkein b'netila b'drabanan, and certainly for the Netilas Yadayim, for our purposes, of course, is a drabanan. For gam b'tfilas harguf nami, lekama posim ein tzorich b'mayan aboim saw dafka. When it comes to ma'ayan, as opposed to a mikveh, you don't need 40 saw. Ela kashir sheyischase guf shel kol adam lefi mashehu. Whatever you need to cover your body according to the size of the person. Even though we don't hold like this, I'll call upon him Netilas Yadayim yesh laka. For the Raisa purposes, for tefillah we're not somich on this, but for drabanan, so for Netilas Yadayim yesh lahakel. But bas achas in one time. For after kosher l'tovin achas achas, even though we're going to see that you dip your hands, you can do them one at a time. Kol adam lefima or kamei b'sif yutches shiamayim tzorich shiruin l'tovin bas achas. You've got to have enough water that you could put both hands in at one go. The main mikvah, says the Mishnah Berurah Pei Aleph, she'enom novim, which are not flowing, they're static. They're gathered in one place. But or either from rainwater or from snow that is melted. If they're very dirty, Ayin lekaman siman kuf samach siv tes. Shedina kamayan, ud midaraisa af b'mayim mchunosim, sagi letfilas kelim b'revius. All you need is really a revius. In hukelim katanim, if there's a small keli, needles and things like that, little cups, bechers that you want to be tovel. Shemischasim b'mayim. V'rak hachom mitzrichu bohem arboim soa. It's just that Chazal said you should use arboim soa k'muk b'tfilas aguf. Or if you need to drabon, then lo yichmiru. Fine. Shetzorech arboim soa. There are those who say that even for a ma'ayan you need 40 soa. Why? The srilu, the kim, the bitlu, rabbonon. Tvila b'pachas be'benan soa, arboim soa, m'chunosim, shuv ein ben tvila klal l'chol dover. Since for mechunosim, if the water to gather together, this tefillah is not going to help. So they did it across the board, even when for a ma'ayan, you can actually do it for less than 40 saw. And we can say, kedivrei mekel, to divrei sofim, you can be mekel, because after all it is a drabon and Netilas Yadayim. But the Ramah says, lachat chilish machmeh, but the b'shas atchak yesh lahakel va'ayim behalacha. Okay, tesvav. Rainwater which is flowing, it's not gathered together in one place. And there is 40 saw of connected flowing rainwater. There is a suffix whether or not you can dip your hands in that. Says Mishnah Berurah Pei Vav. Because geshamim, if they're flowing, it's no good. It's got to be collected together. Even if you've got 40 saw of flowing water in one sort of connecting stream, then there is a suffix whether or not that would work for Netilas Yadayim. V'hainu afilu lahamekilin le'el in mikvah she'ein barboim saw. Here you could argue that a flowing rainwater is worse. Because there you don't actually need a boim saw for tefillah. But here, tefillas kelim on rainwater, flowing rainwater, is even minat Torah no good. The ilu lachmirin le'el v'sovid de boinen davka boim saw k'mo tefillas kol aguf pshitet zeichen le'mahani. Okay. Yesh li stapik val kain yachzev yitl b'lei bracha v'agra pasuk l'kul alma zeichen le'mahani klal. He says that flowing rainwater is not going to help at all. Okay. Tes zayin. Aboim saw Maim shu'uvim shebakarka. What if you've got 40 saw of maim shu'uvim which are in the ground? So that is a machlekes. La Rambam ein matbilin bohem esayadayim. You cannot dip your hands into them. The Ravid matbilin u'shu'uva shem shuchel kula. If maim shu'uvim which has been sort of moved fully, la Rambam matbilin bohem hayadayim. The Rambam who before says ein matbilin here would agree that if it's nimshachin would be okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah Peites shebakarka. Avul bekli hamechuberes lekarka. If, however, it's in a kli which is mechuber lekarka, then ein bo tfilas lekula alma. Then everyone would agree that would not work. The ein tovlin bekelim, because you can't be tovlin in a keli. V'ayin le'el besifches. Ein matbilim. What's the swar of the Rambam? The boin and ma'im hakshem letfilas aguf, and this is not. The Tam Harayvud, who says it's okay, Mishum de Motzil in Tfilas Bale Karian, the Divrei Torah, Shet Tfilas Midrabanan for a Balkari who wants to be Toivel in order to learn Torah, then his Tfilah is Midrabanan, is only Midrabanan. To Muta B'Shu'uvin Shebakarka, he permits, that is allowed for Maim Shu'uvin, which is in the ground, because it Elbasim Peiches, Bebeis Yosef. Shemshichu kula rotzalema da'afim ha'isa kula shu'uvin rak shehimshiches amayim derech ha'karka lemokamache. You sort of diverted the water elsewhere. Kosher b'zeh v'chanal b'sif zayin. Okay, now, so that is less common. Now we're going to talk about rivers and things like that, which is more motzi. You're on a trip. Summer's coming up. You want to dip your hands in the river. Is one allowed to do that? And also we're going to discuss what bracha do you make on Netilas Yadayim, al Tfilas Yadayim, etc. So Yud Zayin. Lo yitzel mehanor mayim biyode achas v'yitin ala shenis. You can't take your hand in the water and then pour it onto the other hand. Why not? Because the fish enkan lo netila v'lo tvila. It's not tvila because you haven't dipped your hand into the water, and it's not netila because you need a kli. Says the Mishnah Berurah lo netila the netila kli me kli boinen v'hacha lo natal klal me kli. So that you scooping up the water with your hand and pouring it onto your other hand. That's not going to work. It's not tvila and it's not netila. Okay, Yudches. Yodai achas benetila v'yodai achas betvila. What about that? That's quite creative. You do Netilah on one hand and Tefillah on the other hand. Yodov Tahiris. Says the Mechaber, it works. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sadi Gimel, Pirush, and not Yodov Achas Mikli Kadin. You do it properly with a Kli. Vashniya Tovel Benahar Ober Mikvah. In the second hand, you dip into either a mikvah or into a nahar. Then it works. Now, the question is, which bracha do you make? One hand Netilah, one hand Tefillah. Bracha Mevarach Bazal Netilas Yadayim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you should make the bracha on the Netilas Yadayim, the Afradas Haramola Kamon, because even though we're going to see soon that when you dip your hands, both hands, you do Tefillah into a Nahar, the Machaba says you make al Netilas Yadayim, the Ramah says you say al Tevilas Yadayim, but here when you do one and one, even the Ramah would agree, Kivin Sheyode Achas Hoysa Benetila, since one hand was Netilah, you make the bracha of al Netilas Yadayim. Okay.
Because Netilah is better?
We'll see soon. You'll see. Let's hold off for a second. We'll see in a second the difference. Yutes Hamat ben Yodov. If you dip your hands in a river or a mikveh, ein sarich shtei pa'amim. You don't need all the other halachas of Netilas Yadayim, i.e., you've washed your hands twice. V'lo nigav, you have to dry your hands. V'lo lagbia yodov, that the tome water flows off. All of those halachas, when it comes to Netilas Yadayim, you can just dunk your hands in the mikveh or in the nahar, and you're good to go. You can eat your bread with wet hands. We said before, it's a bit moss, a bit disgusting, but technically in terms of tahara, it suffices. Says the Mishnah Berurah Tzadi Dalet, Ein Sarich Shtei Pa'amim, to call Elu Hitzricha Mishum Denitma Mayim. Why do you have to wash your hands twice? Why is it we pour the water over each hand twice? Because the water first time round became Tomei, K'shebo al Yodov, Mavur B'simen Kufnan Ches with Kuf Samach Beis, and therefore you wash your hand a second time to wash off the Tomei water. But Aval B'tfila Lo Shaykh Zeh, because once you're in and you've immersed, you're tahar, it's all good. V'lo nigav, you don't even need to dry your hands. Ayin le'el soif siman kufnan ches Mishnah Berurah. Okay, you don't need to dry it. But there, if you remember, he said that it's considered mos, and therefore if you're going to make the bread soggy, that's a separate issue. But in terms of tahara, that would be okay. Now, let's just finish off. Hamat bil chof. Hamat bil yodov, if you do tevilas yodayim, ein mevarich al tevilas yodayim, el al netilas yodayim. The Mechaber says the correct bracha to make is al netilas yodayim. The Yesh Ayrim says the Ramah, the Mevarchin al Tvilas Yadayim, you actually make the bracha al Tvilas Yadayim, or al Shtifas Yadayim, v'chein Ika. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eina Mevarch, Shehechem Tzivon al Tvila. Says the Machaber, you make the bracha al Netilas Yadayim, because Chazal made the tzivui a rule called al Netilas Yadayim, and therefore that is better than al Tvilas Yadayim, because Chazal will never go there that you should make a Tvila before you have bread. It said Netilah. Aval Netilas Tavina, we've commanded Netilah. V'yesh b'chal masayim monash shemach maschiv Netilah shemisanu al matbilin achshav. Right now, it's included in it, but the correct bracha says the Machaber is al Netilas Yadayim. V'yesh Ayrim, this is the Ramah. However, the Achronim, says the Mishnah Berurah, say better to make al Netilas Yadayim, like the Mechaber says, v'rak imamayim pesul Netilah. But just if the water is possible for Netilah, then v'rak le'tefilin is only good for tefillah purposes. There are differences, like we'll say in Mr. Hashem and Kuf Samach Siftez, mevarich al Tfilas Yadayim. So it comes out that it's preferable to make al Netilas Yadayim. If you take a look. Just two quick notes. In 85 at the beginning, if you dip your hands into the sea, because of our prima godim, he says for sure you make an Netilas Yadayim there. In other words, we're talking about a river or a tefillah. There could be a grounds to say al Tfilas Yadayim, but if it's in the sea, that because why? Because our prima godim shatam lekach kiven shemei hayam ru'im l'shti al yidei resicha. It is possible to drink seawater if you boil it up and somehow clean it. But if you look at 86, the second paragraph, he says the chaznish kosov. You always make the bracha on Netilas Yadayim. She'af she'ena mayim l'netilah, even if the water is not rolling netilah, hari tefillos and mekayim mitzvahs in the time, because through the tefillah you're mekayim the mitzvah netilah. Shari nistvina rak on netilah v'rak tefillah v'avateva mekayim mitzvahs netilah. So in short, you're on holiday and you want to wash your hands. The Mechaber says you make al Netilas Yadayim. The Ramah says al Tfilas Yadayim. But the Mishnah Berurah brings the Achronim, and we saw the Chazon Ish saying that it's much better to make al Netilas Yadayim. And certainly if it's in the sea, if you dunk your hands in the sea, then you would make al Netilas Yadayim. So the general rule is, although the Ramah says al Tevilas Yadayim, that the consensus of the Achronim is that you should make the bracha al Netilas Yadayim in all situations.
Just to clarify, even in the river?
Yeah.